Hello there, and welcome to Thank the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
Hey guys, I'm Ryan Key.
And I'm back. It's Nick Gambarian. Hello.
Welcome back to Earth.
We're both back.
I almost forgot to say hello there. I just said hello. It's been a while.
Your foster parents are dead.
All right. That's it for this week.
Speaking of foster parents being dead,
yeah.
I won't step on stolen plans. There's the return of an actor who we've seen only once. We'll talk about it later. She's not my mom, Todd. All right. We're talking about Tales of the Empire, Part 1. This will be our Part 1. It's a 6-part series, obviously, but this will be Part 1 for us. Rather than do all 6 in one, we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes, because it's really just 2 stories split up into 2 3-episode, mini arc kind of things. Not so different from Tales of the Jedi, but Tales of the Jedi kind of like alternated, right?
I vaguely remember that, yeah. Or at least kind of interacted a little bit more.
These were like Clone Wars episodes. Just all 3 were. I haven't watched the second 3 yet, but now that you've said the second 3 are just like the first 3, I was pleasantly surprised that I was following one story.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad they did it like this, especially for us to break it down. Not that like the ease of doing a podcast about something should dictate how a story goes, but I thought it was really nice. There's been some kind of like mixed reception on it. I've heard people not totally stoked because ultimately...
About Star Wars?
I know,
No.
weird, right?
No.
Yeah.
It keeps going. Like, people keep getting mad about Star Wars?
Wild.
That's what I've heard on the
I've been
internet.
gone for like 5 weeks. They're still mad?
Yep.
Oh my
yeah, they
God.
are.
Oh, wow.
But basically, these aren't like incredibly consequential stories, but I don't think they're meant to be. They're meant to fill in blanks. That's why they're short. That's why they're these little tales. And I think it's awesome. What did you guys think, Ryan?
Yeah, dude, I remember seeing in our text thread about how it wasn't anything super important. And then when I realized we were seeing Morgan's backstory the way we were, I was like, this is wildly important. Like, what are you talking about? This is sick. I loved getting that. I loved kind of understanding how she got to the place she's in the live action stuff we've seen recently. And I thought the animation, as always, was mind-blowing, dude. Yeah. The shot at the end of episode 3 with the forest burning and the ship burning and the Beskar staff spinning with the sound. I was going to say, it's like, there's nothing like the sound of Beskar and concrete like hitting each other. But then she like swirled it and it, dude, that was a visually impressive piece of animation. It all was, but that was, dude. What was the representative from the New Republic? What was her name? Do you remember? Who came to visit? It's probably in Stolen Plans.
I'm going to fail right off the top of my head. Nolly, right?
Well, Nolly, is that right?
No.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
We have a Star Wars podcast. Well, let's call her Nolly. When the ship exploded and she was like thrown back from it as she landed, her entire left side was like singed and burning.
Yes. And
it's just the little details like that in this animation that is, it's almost film, it's almost live action. It's just she was burning alive in a cartoon. Intense.
Literally burning alive. Yeah.
So yeah, I was really stoked on all 3 episodes. I mean, take me to Dothmere. I'm pumped. I loved it.
Nick, what did you think?
I'll piggyback on that animation thing. Like, I know we say it all the time. I'm not tired of saying it, but like, this has to be cost effective and quicker to make. Like, just give us all of the animation, whether it's these little snacks that we get or a full on, another Clone Wars type series, just filling in blanks. Like, what about Tales of the New Republic? You know, like, just give us everything. It's so
Yes.
good and so cinematic. What's the difference? I'd rather just get the story than, you know, wait for production of like a huge TV show or movie at this point. But
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious because I'm not an internet troll. What people were upset about with this?
It's like a comic book to me. Like,
yeah.
you know, little stories to fill in stuff. And Nick, yeah, it's the same. This has to be cheaper. This has to be more cost effective, and it's still incredible.
Yeah. And the story of Morgan, is anyone like knocking down the door to you know, after Ahsoka and Mando to hear a story about Morgan? No, but that's worth telling. You know, I also appreciated I can't really decipher the time jump from every episode, but it was, I don't know. I don't want to go as far as say it was like 3 different decades, but it seemed like the last one ended. Just think about when we saw what planet is that? Corvus?
Corvus,
Yep.
yeah.
Think about when we saw that in season 2 of Mandalorian and the forest was smoky.
Mm-hmm.
And we just ended this 3rd episode with that forest burning, and we heard Bo-Katan at the end of that. I'm like, how soon is that? You know, like that's got to be pretty soon, I would assume.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, little things like that. They're just little snacks. Not everything has to change your life, and yeah,
I think
I loved it.
The fact that they recreated that town and her,
Yeah.
you know, her residence with like this sort of Japanese water garden with the bridge and the
Yes.
lanterns over it, like so exactly from Mando, that we're to believe it is leading right up to it almost. You know, I think that was pretty deliberate.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
The interesting part is what year does Mando take place? That season.
Probably
I'm on a Star Wars
9 or-
podcast just so that I can't answer that question for
Well,
you.
wasn't Mando 7 or 8 after? So this is probably like 8 or 9 after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. The only thing that's confusing to me is they Nadura is the character's name. Shelby Young. We'll talk about that in a minute. She basically brings the news of the fall of the Empire to this village, and they're like, "What? When did that happen?" That was 11 ABY. So if it's another like 8 years from, you know, Return of the Jedi to Mando, that's a long time to be out in the cold,
Yeah.
you know, in the Outer Rim, not knowing what's going on. Then again, if it's a police state and she's keeping all of the news out, you know, North Korea style, who knows?
Yeah, that's some real life stuff. Not knowing that the war is over.
Physics
Not being
Buddy
told
Joe,
that the
patron
war
in the
order.
chat, gave us some years here. Episode 1 is 20 BBY. Episode 2 between 9 and 2 BBY. Pretty vague. Episode 3 between 5 and 9. ABY.
ABY. Yeah, cool.
And Ahsoka is 9. Interesting. Hold on. So wait. Okay, so never mind. I'm like misreading this. I was looking at like Fall of the Empire timeline stuff earlier. The true Fall of the Empire is different from like when the Death Star blew up, right? Because there's, you know, the subsequent battles and then the remnant and all this kind of shit, right? So anyway, math, history, years, subtraction, addition, whatever. Either way, I loved it too. I thought it was so awesome. Like I love these little bits, even though sometimes like the trailer and the anticipation is so much bigger, simply because these are so short. Not because nothing great happened, but just because they're so little. Like I watched them all on the plane on the way back from Vegas. I could have watched them again, you know. But yeah, I thought it was great, and I thought, yeah, you know, on the subject of the animation being so beautiful and the, you know, the art and the renderings, I also just love seeing Rebels characters rendered in Clone Wars style. Because Thrawn, I mean, Thrawn was great in Rebels, but he looks so much better like this. Has a little bit of
Yeah.
Lars Mikkelsen to his look. Rook also looked cooler, looked less goofy, more
Yeah, way
actually
creepier.
dangerous.
Mhm.
So I thought that stuff was great. And I think they're doing a good job of, and they've been doing this since like earlier days in Clone Wars, but taking characters' real live action likenesses and not necessarily making them identical in animation, but even some of the voice actors who we haven't seen in live action, just their real life appearance is kind of reflected in these characters, and some whose names I'd never heard, and I went back and looked at their IMDb's, and you could see it. Like Katie Sackhoff, years and years ago, was probably one of those. They probably said, "Oh, yeah, make it look kind of like her," and then it all works out in the end. So, there's a lot more, like a lot deeper stuff than we'll probably get into with this, because there's like not necessarily a point in fully linking all of this for everyone, because this is so obviously backstory for things that we've recently seen or that we know, but we'll get into some stuff in the Den of Antiquities, some more like nuanced crap. But before we do that, Nick, do you want to do Stolen Plans? Want to get back behind
Let's do
the wheel?
it.
Sick.
What have you done with those plans?
Alrighty, so the 6-episode drop on May the 4th of Tales of the Empire was on Disney Plus. Dave Filoni gets story by executive producer and supervising director credits. A lot of the Star Wars animation crew we've gotten to know over the past few years is back for this one. If you can't tell, score by Kevin Kiner, Sean Kiner, and Deanna Kiner. And episode 1, The Path of Fear. The Disney Plus description: a young Morgan Elsbeth seeks revenge after losing everything. Runtime was 16 minutes, directed by Nate Villanueva, written by Amanda Rose Munoz, and starring Matthew Wood, who's returning as General Grievous. I'm pretty sure all he did was laugh
Right.
as he was murdering Night Sisters. Kathy Ang as young Morgan Elsbeth. Didn't really have any roles that we recognized aside from character Harley Quinn in the animated series called Golden Gilder. Diana Lee Inosanto as a Night Sister, and also obviously Morgan Elsbeth, and also Morgan Elsbeth's mother, Selena. Daisy Lightfoot as Nolly, credited from a few video game voices, including Horizon Zero Dawn and some Marvel animation voices. Susie McGrath was credited as Witch Number 1. Also, one credit she had in Star Wars lore is Tam Rivora in Star Wars Resistance. Megan Marchand as Witch Number 2. No other acting credits, mostly worked on production side, including being a production coordinator in all 12 episodes of the Clone Wars Season 7. And Regina Hermosillo as Witch Number 3. No other acting credits either. Mostly works in the art department, including 16 episodes of The Mandalorian. So, wonder if they were just like, "Hey, you, get in the vocal booth."
Or, hey, you think I could do like a little voice on this one, maybe? Hey, can I do one too?
All right, since there's 3 episodes here, we'll go through all of them. The Path of Anger, Disney Plus description: Morgan is approached by a potentially powerful ally. Runtime a little shorter at 14 minutes, directed by Stuart Lee, written by Amanda Rose Munoz, starring Lars Mikkelsen, returning as Admiral Thrawn, a little bit before he was Grand Admiral Thrawn. Like to see him in darker gear, kind of more menacing in a way. Diana Lee Inosanto reprising her live-action role as Morgan Elsbeth. Xander Berkeley reprising his role... Xander Berkeley reprising his live-action role in The Mandalorian as Captain Gilead. Pelion of the Shadow Council, and he's that guy from a ton of TV and movies, including John Connor's foster dad, Todd, in Terminator 2. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
She's
really
not my
awesome.
mother, Todd. Yeah.
Warwick Davis returning as Thrawn's personal bodyguard, Assassin Rook. And Meg Marchand as Villager Number 2. Star Wars animation voice veteran Shelby Young as Villager Number 3. Disney Imagineer Wing T. Chow reprising his live-action role as Governor Wing. And then we move to the 3rd episode of this arc, The Path of Hate. Disney Plus description is offered the chance to stand trial for her crimes. Morgan instead seeks her destiny. Runtime even shorter at 13 minutes. directed by Nate Villanueva, written by Amanda Rose Munoz, and starring Shelby Young as Nadora, Steve Blum as New Republic guard, and Reggie, voice of Zeb Arolios. So he returns, which is pretty cool. I mean, he's done all of Zeb, right? Like even in Mando season 3.
Yeah.
And very, very briefly, we hear Katie Sackhoff as the voice of Bo-Katan Kryze. Katie will be with us on the Galaxy Cruise 1 year from now, which is pretty crazy.
Wild.
So that was cool. That was a good little tie-in there at the end as everything was burning and Morgan was walking towards the. Do you call it a camera in animation? Was she walking towards the camera?
The virtual camera, yeah.
Yeah.
The digital camera. Yeah. Real quick, shout out to Katie Sackhoff's recently rebooted podcast. New name. I don't know what it was called before. I think it now it's just called The Sackhoff Show. The first or second episode back, she had Ming-Na Wen on, and it's a great episode. Check it out. She's really good as a podcast host, actually. She's got a lot of energy. She's good.
Yeah, some people just like talking, you know. She seems every time she's on camera, even like behind the scenes stuff, she just seems happy to be there. So
yeah, there's a great clip. I won't go deep on it, but there's a great clip about whether or not they knew what was going on in the scene when Luke Skywalker shows up in Mando. Ming-Na Wen swears that she knew. Katie Sackhoff did not know. She was so mad at Dave Filoni. It's a good story.
Yeah. Well, Ming-Na was like, who else could it be? Which is like what we were saying. We're like, it had to be him, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about these episodes a little bit. So, The Path of Fear, this is like a rehashing or a reimagining, not a reimagining, just like another part of the planet, I guess, the Battle of Dathomir, which we originally saw in, was it season 4, episode 19, if I'm remembering right, of the Clone Wars Massacre, when Grievous goes there with all the droids and they just destroy everything on Dathomir. They kill all the witches. So, of course, we see Grievous again. Morgan Elsbeth's mother fights Grievous, dies, and this sets her on this dark path. So, as you can see by the titles, it's almost like a, and we'll talk about this maybe next week. It's like not a mirror, but a different version of the. Oh, come on, brain. You know,
kind of what Yoda says, right? Like,
yeah, but
fear, anger, hate.
Right, and we'll talk about that. But God, the damn character in the 4, 5, and 6. Come on,
Darth Vader.
No, in
Barriss.
Barriss. It's a different version of Barriss's path. You know, the way that things shake out for her, because you know they're both kind of hurt by the Empire ultimately. You know, they're both manipulated in this like larger chess game, and they go down similar paths, but they have different ends. So this one takes us. This one catches us up to Ahsoka and the Mandalorian with Morgan Elsbeth, and it's so interesting because like they both have opportunities. You know, there's Morgan ends up being rescued by this mountain clan of Force witches, which I didn't really like quite understand, you know, at first watch. But they're light side witches. They're on Dathomir. They're just another clan, you know, the mountain clan. And ultimately, like the spell fades of the Night Sisters. The markings go away on her face, and they give her the opportunity. They kind of like offer the path, the light path, and she chooses to go the dark path. And that leads us to the second episode. What did you guys take from that first one, aside from just it setting it up that way? Did you pick up on the light side thing at first? Or did you or that they were even witches? It was kind of mysterious to me at first, and I had to rewatch.
Witches,
yeah, I mean,
yes.
I didn't get a chance to rewatch, but I felt like they were. I think I just sort of settled on a different clan of witches on Dathomir. I don't think I picked up light side, but I mean, thinking back now, because I only got to watch it one time shortly before we started recording this podcast because I have a 5-month-old child. At the end, when you know the sort of like elder witch sister, whatever, she said something about what was the line about not wanting to fight, or it was really good.
Yeah, just like don't assume that because someone doesn't fight that they can't. Something like
yes,
Yes.
it was like that. So I think in hindsight, yes, that very much is very Jedi-esque, you know.
There are alternatives to fighting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. I didn't necessarily like. I still like am murky about the Night Sisters, like their take on the Force. So I didn't automatically say like, oh, they're using light side of the Force or anything like that. But light side witches just in their wardrobe were lighter, you know.
Yeah.
And just using their magic to protect, kind of was a good step in that direction. So makes sense.
There's some interesting stuff in the den that we'll talk about that references that this is a reference to, more like. Path of Anger, so the second one, there's a great quote from, I guess it's The Mandalorian, when it is in The Mandalorian, when Ahsoka says to Din about Morgan Elsbeth, when she basically gives him the TLDR on her, she says, Morgan Elsbeth, during the Clone Wars, her people were massacred. She survived and let her anger fuel an industry which helped build the Imperial Starfleet. She plundered worlds, destroying them in the process.
Well, there you go.
So it's this like, she says, it's for the glory of the Empire. I don't know how obvious that's supposed to be, that's not really it, But she definitely like leverages the Empire, because it starts with this, which I thought was amazing, like almost like PowerPoint presentation on the TIE Defender in front of a bunch of Imperials. Yeah. So she, at least in part, was like directly responsible for the design and prototyping of that.
Yeah, that's totally new info, because up until this point, that was Thrawn's TIE Defender program.
Yeah.
So now we see that it wasn't necessarily his idea, I guess.
Yeah. So she presents it, and they basically say, like, no, that's not going to work. But the one officer, who's played by Todd, shows some interest, and that's when she drops the, for the glory of the Empire line. But apparently, and tell me again if, like, I guess it's directly from that meeting. He basically, like, tells Thrawn, like, yo, there's some potential here, and they set up this whole thing. They send Rook to go, like, test her back on Corvus. She brings bad news. They're expecting, like, yeah, you're going to bring jobs and all this stuff. Like, there's just so much of this, like, real world stuff in the Empire now that we're seeing. Like, it's about, like, the way politicians manipulate people and promise them things. And then before you know it, you're, like, in a police state, which is exactly what she does. But basically, like, she doesn't bring back good news. So they start to kind of, like, revolt a little bit. And then the shit goes down with Rook coming there to attack her. She ultimately wins, and then Thrawn and Pelion show up, and they're like, all right, cool, like, you can hang, we had to test you. And they have this great conversation, she and Thrawn, and that's the only time he's in the episode, but it like plants the seeds for everything basically with him. He almost like Scooby-Doo villains the situation a little bit, he lays out what's coming.
And he's just Admiral Thrawn.
Right.
In this, which was cool.
Yeah.
But that's part of what confuses me about what you said at the top of the show about people being not stoked on this in some way. Like, yeah. I feel like Ahsoka was overall pretty well received. Mm-hmm. And this is such a huge piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
That he scouted her early on, and that I don't think Thrawn gives a shit about the Empire either.
Yeah, he
really
basically says it right there. Like, they're doing it wrong. They're going to fail.
And he says, long live the Empire, but it's almost cynical, right?
Yeah.
And when she says revenge, he's like, yes, you're my people. Mm-hmm. You're not these bureaucrats sitting around a table deciding whether or not we can afford your TIE fighter. You have a passionate personal vendetta that you want to use the Empire for. And I think that's Thrawn in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Thrawn's just mad he's not the Emperor at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
He's like,
Mad
think
but
there's-
patient, though, you know?
yeah, he schemes, you know, and I think when he recognizes that in someone else, that they're also that each decision they're making is calculating some scheme or some path.
Right.
I think he really relates to her, and you can see that in that scene, and it was super cool.
I want to say there's a thread of an idea in the Thrawn novels that, like, really his rise to power ultimately his rise to power in the Empire has to do with like wanting to help his people, you know. So like I
Right,
think
yeah.
he's using the Empire with that as the end goal, and like Morgan's who she says
she's
she
doing
wants
the same
revenge,
thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
like she says she wants revenge, but literally it was like Grievous who like and the pre-Empire, you know, like that killed her people. So I guess there's like a little bit of an unspoken thing there where it's just like, if we're going to get revenge or get our way, we have to use the Empire,
Right.
which is, you know, slippery slope.
Yeah. It's like they have to be on Instagram if their business will succeed. I didn't
And
write down the quote.
TikTok and Facebook
Right.
and Snapchat and okay, I'll shut up.
I didn't write down the quote. It was so good though. You know, when Thrawn laid it out, he said something about, you know, like their lack of compassion or their like dismissal of their people or whatever. Like it's bad strategy essentially. The Empire, you know, like people are gonna you know, within their own ranks and people in other systems will at some point not take the shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And if nothing else, it's bad. It's lack of strategy. It's like lack of foresight.
Yeah, I think if it were up to him, he would long play the citizens of all of these systems way more, whereas the Empire is just like pump the oil, sell the gas. You know,
Yeah.
they don't.
No future.
I agree. I think Thrawn has some deep rooted disdain for the Empire and the way things are done.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's one of those very ambitious officers in the military who sort of feels like if this were up to me, I would do it all differently. But he believes in the cause, right? I guess he believes in control, and he believes
Right.
that the Jedi were wrong. The basis for why, you know, I don't know, why a Nazi Germany would rise to power, and then you realize the guy running it is a maniac and doing it all wrong. That all happened in real life in the 40s. A lot of people who worked for him were like, dude, what are you doing? We need to retreat from Russia so we can win the war. And he was like, no, we're not doing that. And I think Thrawn is one of those officers who sees the bigger picture and sees all of the mistakes that are being made. And again, that's why I think these episodes were so cool. And that moment was so cool because he recognized himself in Morgan and was like, this is an ally. I
Yes.
can work with you. I can't work with my superiors, my peers, but I can work with you. And we know how that panned out in the end.
So Morgan, we didn't mention yet. You know, we mentioned him in the in Jesus Christ, I'm so tired. In Stolen Plans, but the character, Jesus Christ, Ming. What is his name? Jesus, come on.
Which character?
Oh, the Imagineer. I'm so fried right now.
Wing?
Wait, yeah.
What year were you born?
I was born in the 70s, bro. So Wing is like the governor at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Is she
Great hairline. Just,
Yeah.
God, I'm jealous. Ugh.
She's not yet the magistrate, or is she? They're pretty vague about it, right?
Well, they call her magistrate. I guess I'm getting the episodes confused a little bit, but I think she's magistrate once she's in her little domicile area there.
In episode 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Point being, he it's interesting, like, if there is that much of a time jump, like how much she tolerated or when it happened, when the actual flip happened, because we get to Path of Hate, episode 3, and the ambassador brings, played by Shelby Young, brings the news of the fall of the Empire. They had no idea what was going on out there. We see those sort of like standing cells, the rings, those towers that they have people stand on by the gate. They're putting some gnarly practices in place. You can see like factories off in the distance and smoke. Like this turn to make this just a place to exploit for the Empire, so she can then gain power and favor. That's all in play. And then, like Ryan talked about at the top, they basically just say nope and kill all of the new Empire folks, blow up that ship. Which, by the way, when we talked about the trailer, we didn't mention that sort of like melted Twinkie-looking ship. I just saw the Phantom Menace in theaters the other day. It's the same ship that they arrive on Coruscant with.
Oh, nice.
For the first time, but it's that like brick-colored one then.
Mm-hmm.
I got a dip. I love you guys. I got a dip.
May the Force be with you, and don't do it until it changes thing.
And don't what?
There we go. Now you can do it.
I'm exiting on Star Wars rips, and I'm still baffled that that anyone had something wrong with this. It was so rad. Every part of this was so rad. So I can't wait to watch the final 3 and talk about it with you boys next week. So may the Force also be with you.
Later, bud.
Later.
Here we go. So yeah, they basically kill everyone, and she just gives the order, and they burn everything surrounding. So she finally just like fully takes full control. It's like she's doing a little mini Palpatine. Slash and burn everything. And at the very end, the ambassador, she's trying to escape, gets blown up. She's charred, burning, like Ryan talked about. And Wing, approaches her, talks to her basically as she's dying, and she's got a comm in her hand, which she drops. She had just tried to send a distress call, and we hear someone finally answering it the very last second. It's Bo-Katan's voice, and then that comm gets stabbed by Morgan Elsbeth's Beskar staff, and that's the end, essentially.
Yeah. I have to sneeze. Allergy season. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see how soon that episode of Mandalorian would be. Because what is the process of if Bo-Katan is intercepting that? Because that's supposed to, that transmission's going to New Republic. Bo-Katan intercepts it. At what point is Bo-Katan then in touch with Ahsoka? Tells her, tells Mandalorian, tells Din to go to Corvus and look for Ahsoka. So, I mean, are we talking like weeks? I mean,
yeah.
That forest is smoldering in that season 2 episode of Mando. So, how long do forests smolder? Like, I don't know.
And I would think if she puts Wing in one of those sort of cage things right away, when she, takes full control, it has to be. Either she didn't put him in right away, or she did, and it's literally, like you said, weeks, days. Who knows? She also says something really cool, and I don't remember the exact quote, but she says something like she's seen a vision of things to come. Obviously, that is a reference to the events of the Ahsoka series, Peridia, Thrawn, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, if anything, like I wish this was all about Morgan and even more backstory. You know, like where does she, how does she contact anyone on Peridia? Like what is any of that? Like I would love to know all of that. Like Peridia is just this uncharted territory right now that we got so much from, but like not like it's they introduced it and it's more, but like there's just more questions. There's no answers really. So I would love to know more, but oh well.
It makes you wonder when this was written and what the plan was, and then what the Ahsoka Season 2 plan is going to be now that Rey is no longer with us. are they going to spend more time with Morgan Elsbeth's backstory in flashbacks in Ahsoka season 2? You know, stuff that they may have put in this before, you know, knowing that Rey was going to die. Or they didn't know, obviously, and you know, before he died. Maybe they flip it, you know, maybe they put some of his story in animation like this and then kind of turn it more to Morgan in live action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be. My nerd story in Discord says, I wonder if next year or the year after we get Tales of the Mandalorians.
Yes.
Love
dude.
that idea. Love that idea.
That would be incredible, because you know we got the early days of the Mandalorians. We set up all this stuff in the Clone Wars, so it would be sick to get a dedicated thing that fills in. I don't know, even like Din's younger years, you know, stuff about Death Watch in general, or the Children of the Watch. Maybe that whole story, that would be sick.
I love that. I mean, I just think that these, like, I don't want to say inconsequential, but, you know, these little stories just gives us something to watch. It gives, like, if you went back after watching these first 3 episodes of Tales of the Empire, if you go back and watch Ahsoka season 2, it just adds a little depth. And
For sure.
It's great.
All right, let's get into the Den of Antiquities.
For over 1,000 generations.
It is the dark saber, Torquedon. Oh gosh.
It's a Calicori.
A Sith wayfinder.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
The Den of Antiquities.
That sounded. Did you? You didn't remake that, did you? It sounded
No.
like. It sounded like you like remastered it.
Oh, like
Sounded
better?
great to me.
Sick. Like I said before, a lot of things that we usually put in here are obvious references to the shows that this thing is filling in the blanks for. So we won't go too deep, but we have a handful of fun stuff. So episode 1 revisits the Battle of Dathomir, which we saw in the Clone Wars season 4, episode 19, Massacre. I was going to ask Ryan what he remembers about Dathomir from Jedi Fallen Order. Nick, you didn't get that far in it, did you?
I got about 45 minutes in before I had a panic attack, so no.
So I did watch some things, and there were like a lot of, you know, consistent things with the architecture and like the look of the planet before it's a wasteland. Basically, it has it's like a different version of Tatooine architecture in a lot of places, and it's got some temples and some cool stuff that if you go do side by sides, you can pick out some really cool stuff. We'll maybe do some of those side by sides and put them on Instagram. We'll see. The 3 episode titles, 1, 2, and 3, are of course a reference to Yoda's famous line from The Phantom Menace: "Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering." Good stuff.
Yeah, because in the end, it's all like Morgan's suffering. I mean, she loses her life at the end of all this in Ahsoka.
And suffers all along the way. Clearly, not having a good time. The Phantom Menace, by the way, looks great in theaters. Saw it on an IMAX screen. The visuals, for what they are, actually hold up really well.
Yeah, I'm really upset that I don't think I'm going to be able to see it. Tomorrow's the last day that it's in theaters, and I mean, at least out here, I don't think it's making it through the weekend. I looked at times, and I didn't see anything for Friday, Saturday, but Thursday was the last, and I just don't think. I was telling you off before we started, like, I got home Monday night, and it is now Wednesday night, and I've, like, barely been home. I've been way too busy, so I feel like I'm still on tour, honestly. So I don't know that I'm going to get to see The Phantom Menace, which annoys the hell out of me.
Maybe they'll extend it, because it's, like, crushing right now. It's now officially in the top 50 movies of all time with the re-release, so.
That's great.
It's doing really well. Let's see, what else? Back to the Den. The Mountain Clan of Witches. We talked about them being a light side users of Force magic. They are actually an adaptation of the original Night Sisters from the 1994 Now Legends book the courtship of Princess Leia. So Luke, at some point, I just barely read the Wikipedia article, but he goes to find like a Jedi, some kind of Jedi text or something, and it's been destroyed by these witches. This is where the term Night Sister and the planet Dathomir are coined in this book. They were actual Night Sisters in that, but they were like these singing kind of witches, kind of like they are in this. So they kind of just borrowed different things at some point during the Clone Wars, and then now they're borrowing the rest to create this other clan. We talked about earlier how they offer Morgan the path to the light. She rejects it, etc. One thing that stands out is like how the what do they call her? She's not the mother. They called her the matron. The Mountain Clan matron character, she teleports in, like force teleports, and does that sort of like almost like Force Unleashed, like force bubble kind of thing, and wipes out all these droids. That's the first force teleportation I've seen in that sense. Not a projection like Luke in the sequels, but like actually teleports. But again, since you and I haven't played Fallen Order, we didn't know that, in fact, in Jedi Fallen Order, the Night Sister, Merrin, that's her name, right? Merrin? Damn, autocorrect screwed me up. She uses teleportation all over the place. So that is, I think all of this ultimately just goes back to that book. The original Night Sister stuff in the Clone Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, and this. They're pulling all the pieces out of it.
Yeah. Changing them a little bit, but
yeah.
It's all source material that could be used, which is great.
It's good stuff.
Just one day it's going to run out, Filoni. Then what?
Then what, Dave? All right. That's all for the den this time, unless you have anything, Nicholas.
No. I loved seeing Paleon. That was it. That was really cool. And just we didn't need a backstory for the backstory of the TIE Defender program, but we got it. That's cool. I don't even know if that belongs in the den. I'm just spitting thoughts right now. I loved it though. It's cool. It's like one of those things where I'm just like, I keep going back to this word, inconsequential, but I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Morgan, she didn't get any credit for that. That was all Thrawn, as far as we know, for the TIE Defender program, but I like it.
Yeah, I'm really like latched onto this idea that these are like comic books, like moving animated comic books. And it's great because I'm just like, I'm not a good reader, even of comic books. I kind of, you know what I mean? I try to read them at night. I fall asleep. I try to read them during the day. I can't pay attention.
Yep.
So I love this kind of stuff. All right, let's move on to I Love You, I Know.
I love you.
I know.
Favorite scenes, favorite quotes, favorite moments, and so on. Nick, you and I can kind of bounce back and forth. We can pull some of these out of the patrons here. I'll grab the Blue Guy 808 saying that their favorite moment from the first 3 episodes was obviously seeing Thrawn. And my nerd story says the same thing. Obviously, Thrawn showing up doesn't take much, but I really want to know what he was up to during this time. Agreed.
Yeah, so Cal Bat, a.k.a. Ethan, learning that Morgan's connection to Thrawn comes from her championing the TIE Interceptors was a fun choice. That tie-in, no pun intended, to Timothy Zahn's Thrawn novels was something I didn't see coming, yeah. I don't think anyone did. It's kind of just like this little thing where someone probably just had an idea that was like, what if this? And someone was like, yeah, no reason not to.
Right. Physics Buddy Joe says he loves Thrawn's fleet above Corvus, which we did mention earlier. Just like the end of the Bad Batch, we see the original trilogy Star Destroyers finally side by side with the Clone Wars era class that I'm spacing on right now. God, I'm so
I feel you, man.
fried on the brain.
Yeah. I think tonight I might become one with the Force. I might just lay down and disappear. I'm so tired.
Stacy Leanne says, the Morgan arc isn't my favorite, but I do like the title of each episode, The Path of Fear, The Path of Anger, The Path of Hate. It all leads to suffering. Yoda, exclamation mark above his head emoji. Fully agree. Another great quote from the Blue Guy 808, Morgan Elsbeth. You've made a very good tool to help us crush the rebellion, but we've decided it's too expensive to build, and we'd much rather throw as many of these cheap fighter craft as we can at the problem until it goes away, while we get rich off strip mining your world. That really kind of encapsulates.
Yeah, sums it up.
Yeah, how bad they.
That is. I mean, he says that he uses the word hubris in that the preamble there. Like, yeah, I mean, it's. If there's anything that this new era of Star Wars is showing on both the Rebellion side and the Empire side and the Jedi side, Sith side, I mean, no one's perfect. No one's perfect at being good or bad. You know, like there's just a lot of there's cracks, and that's why it's just a ping pong ball going back and forth.
Yeah, and that much power and control of anything, even with the best intentions, ultimately is problematic. And it all lines up with it. I think it's a great way to further to create new stories in the spirit of Lucas's original vision for Star Wars, which was, power and balance, and the lack of balance when there is so much power. Can't be all light, can't be all dark, because neither can sort of exist in a vacuum. So, I'm about it. I'm on board. Speaking of that, there's a great line from the Acolyte, the full scene that they actually show after the Phantom Menace. They do it after the credits, the special look. So they show the new trailer after showing the full scene where Trinity, whatever her real name is, meets the villain in that cantina or whatever. They start to fight, and she radios or comms to the ship or whatever. She says, unidentified Force user. And, in that spirit of the High Republic, like the peak of the hubris, where originally, like the very first High Republic thing, what was the line about controlling the Force or whatever? I forgot what it was specifically, but it illustrates in that one line just how imbalanced everything is. If they're reporting unauthorized, like unregistered Force users, basically, clearly it's the beginning of the end. So all this is setting up such cool stuff, and I'm
even more reason for me to see the Phantom Menace, which I don't think I'm going to be able to.
Well, maybe somebody was holding up their iPhone camera during that, and they could help you if you can't make it. I'll ask around. Couldn't be me. Nick, how about your favorite part?
I just loved seeing Thrawn. I loved the Clone Wars style animation Thrawn, just a little less cartoony. Mm-hmm. I loved seeing him, like I said earlier, in darker Empire garb, Imperial garb. So that was great. I mean, I seeing him is one thing, but his like just tenor and what he was kind of bringing to the table, I thought was just that super important. I think that I'm interested to see in a couple of years, whenever we get his demise for real in the movie,
right?
Like, what is his ultimate goal at that point in the movie? Because the way they're presenting him and have presented him in novels and stuff he said in this episode, I'm not sure that that sentiment aligns right now. So I'm interested to see how he winds up. I mean, maybe being in a different galaxy for however long kind of changed his mind to just be a dick all of a sudden. But we'll see. But yeah, I think his presentation for whatever 1 or 2 minutes in that episode was just 10 out of 10. I loved it.
Absolutely. I'm going to do that thing again where I can't pick one thing, but I'll pick like a sequence. and it is more than a scene specifically. It was seeing Morgan Elsbeth out of the context of just that city on that one planet, outside of the walls of her city, seeing her in, on Coruscant in a boardroom essentially, and seeing her kind of vulnerable there. And then the very next scene, you see her being a badass like we've seen her in The Mandalorian, and then she meets Thrawn. It's that sequence right there that felt so extra special to me, because she wasn't just, not that she's one-dimensional in The Mandalorian or Ahsoka, but she's a person in a place with a purpose in the story, where here we're seeing her story, and those two things back to back tell you a lot, even if you don't watch episode 1 or 3. Just that does a lot of heavy lifting in those two, that one sequence in those two scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I wanted to mention this earlier too. Sorry to interject, but it is funny that in an overall Disney way, but then the subreddit of Disney Star Wars way, that she just watched her mother die.
Right.
And like it turned it like kind of kicked off the story, her storyline. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a Disney thing. It's also a Star Wars thing in a few ways. So
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, just do that again, I guess.
Oh, did you also notice? Sorry, this is completely a different subject. Did you notice the use of they them for a character?
I did not.
The fourth. Oh, you know what? This is in the second half. This is in
okay.
With the Inquisitors.
Why don't we talk about that next week?
What a great idea! All right, we'll talk about it then. That's it. That's it for us this week. Mosh Eisley tickets, of course, are on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-sale for the Galaxy Cruise is live right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was the deadline for to I guess sign up for pre-sale. So that's going on now, I believe, and then official public, sales for everyone, that goes live May 17th, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe so. And reminder that the Galaxy Cruise is a cruise, so
yes,
limited capacity.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's the same boat or the sister ship of the boat that the Emo's Not Dead cruise was on, which Ryan and I recently did, and it is about 2,000 capacity.
Yeah. So but that like includes like crew and us, and right? Like there's only so many cabins.
Yeah, I think there's about 1,000 cabins. Is that right? It's not huge. So if you want to go,
seems like a lot.
You need to be on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be great because you get sort of a con on a boat, like a Star Wars con. We'll be there doing interviews, being on stage, presenting, hosting, and then 2 Mosh Eisleys.
Mm-hmm.
So
how cool is that? That's so cool.
It's going to be amazing. So if you're bummed, if you can't make it to Japan for Star Wars Celebration, this is the week after, right? 2 weeks after?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks after. So don't let the FOMO get the best of you. Get on the cruise if you can't make it to Japan. We are going, by the way. We got tickets.
Mm-hmm. We got our celebration tickets. Thankfully, Henry Clark came through.
Yes.
We were all in. We had our last day off of tour in Pittsburgh, and I was sitting at dinner. And, the queue they say it's random, which I guess it kind of is. Like, because my tour manager, Matt, who got tickets, thankfully, was sitting right across from me, and he said, I have 15 minutes left in my queue, and I was still like an hour out, even though we signed in at the same time. And then you guys had the same thing. I think you were saying like you were an hour out, and then Henry Clark got our tickets for us, which was so clutch. But yeah, I'm excited, and it's less than a year at this point. Thankfully, could finally say we're within a year.
Yeah.
And then we have this Galaxy Cruise right after.
Next year's going to be wild, and all the lead up is going to be crazy too, because it's stuff's going to happen between now and then. So very excited. Thank you, Henry. PayPal money's coming. Talking about it right now just reminded me. My bad.
I already paid him.
You're a much better citizen.
I made sure.
Good stuff. All right. Next week, again, we will. This will be part 2 of Tales of the Empire. We'll talk about episodes 4, 5, and 6. It'll be a good time. And until then, may the Force be with you. If you enjoy Thank the Maker, you can support us by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/thankthemakerpod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, our recording live stream, and more. Our patrons quite literally make Thank the Maker possible.